Coming up next, Anne-Louise Sterry, motivational humorist. Good afternoon and welcome to Picking Up the Pieces, where we dare to persevere and help young adults reach their full potential. We're very excited today to have on Anne-Louise Sterry. She's a motivational humorist. Welcome.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So you're our first motivational humorist, so we're very excited to have you. So let's start off with, tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do.
Kim, this is a very long story, so I'll make it kind of short. What I do is I speak to associations and conferences and companies and any kind of group that has a meeting. And I speak about how to rewire the brain to have more joy in your life. And I do this as myself and as my alter ego, Aunt Lena, and we're funny. We're funny. And that's what we do. We go around the country doing this, and we sing songs and we tell stories while we're doing it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Because even if you have this amazing message and you're boring, people will be like, oh, you know, they just tune you out. You know, even if you have the most, I deal a lot with young adults, and even if I have the most fantastic things to say that could, you know, get them the job of their dreams, if you don't make it funny, if you don't make it interesting, if you don't make it heartfelt, people tune you out, and it's not even worth their time or your time. You got to make education fun. You got to make education interesting.
Yes, and you know that I think they say now people's attention span is like 9 minutes. They can't attend more than that, even grown-ups. So you have to keep it moving. You have to keep them laughing and getting up and down and doing things. And I love that because in my previous life, and still now, I was a children and family performer. So I did music and storytelling performances all across America and in Europe for kids and families.
Fantastic, and you can see a lot of, you know, keeping the, I have a young, almost 2-year-old now, Nate, and keeping him entertained and active. You know, you go from playing with the trains to playing with the trucks to, okay, back to playing with the trains and then playing with the animals. So you have to be able to really move with it. So that's great training. So that actually brings us to our next question. How did you get started in this? Because not every day you wake up and as a young person say, I would like to be a motivational or an inspirational humorist someday.
No, in fact, it was never anything I ever thought about when I was a young adult or when I was growing up at all. It wasn't until I was about almost 40. And actually, I didn't start as this. I started as this children's performer because I read a magazine article at the doctor's office.
Wow.
With the kids. I have 3 little kids, and I don't even know who wrote the article, I'm sorry to say. But the article said, if you want to know what you want to be when you grow up. Think about what you want to be, what you wanted to be when you were little. And I wanted to be on Broadway.
Wow.
Because we lived across the George Washington Bridge in New Jersey, and we got to see a lot of Broadway shows, and that's what I wanted to do. This article said, you may not be able to do it to the extent that you dreamed when you were 5, but put it in your life. So it was music that I wanted. So I started putting music in my life, which is how I began to work with children and music. And at the time, I was too scared to even speak in front of grown-ups.
Wow, wow. So that's so interesting because I have a lot of young adults that watch the show and they think that you're supposed to know from the day you were born, you know, kind of, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's so helpful to hear people come on and say, you know what, my journey was so circuitous, it went this way and that way and things evolved. So you had something that you love to do, and that's what we try and help young adults find, that thing that clicks with them. And that for you it was music and connecting with people and making people happier. And then it evolved from there. So you started really working with children and you started being, you were a teacher? Were you?
No, I would go into schools. Actually, I started with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds at preschools. I would go into schools as their special guest preschools and sit on the floor and sing the Eensy Weensy Spider, and Mary had a little lamb with play my guitar and tell them little stories. That's how I started.
Wow.
It's a very circuitous route. So because before that I was a nurse, and before that I was a preschool teacher way back when.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I started on this journey singing for little children and telling stories, and then somebody hired me to speak. And I want to just tell you, the first time I spoke, I was terrified. So your audience can know that too. I was so scared, I couldn't even swallow my dinner, which was free. And so in my book, you know, you get a free dinner, you eat it. I could not even swallow. I was so scared.
Wow.
Anyway, I started doing that, and then I moved into performing for older children at schools, doing assembly programs. and people started asking me to give workshops about how to use music and stories with children.
Wow.
So I started presenting at the workshops, being a breakout presenter.
Right.
And then eventually people started asking me to be the keynote speaker. I never thought about being a keynote speaker, ever.
Wow.
And I never thought about being a humorist.
Right.
I never thought of any of those things. It just sort of was the path.
Right.
And what I would say is things kept opening up.
Right.
And my thought was, if you say yes, even if you're terrified, something good's going to come from that. That's what I decided when I did that first speaking gig for grown-ups. I was so scared. I said, just keep saying yes. So I just kept saying yes. You want to do this? Yes, I can do that.
Right.
And then I figured, you want to do this? Yes, I can do that.
Right, and it just leads you to one thing, because what I counsel a lot of young adults and a lot of individuals in general is find things that you like, because the idea is to get more things into your life that you like rather than kind of the junky stuff that you don't like.
Yes.
And figuring out pieces. I'm working with a young woman now, and she's like, I'm not sure what I want to do when I grow up. And I'm like, well, what do you love? And she said, music. So we're trying to build from the music piece and think about marketing and music. And she also loves social media. She's forever texting and, you know, on the LinkedIn and the Twitter and things like that. So we're trying to build from that. And she just kind of lit up when we got to that. Before that, she was trudging through kind of where should I send my cover letter? Where should I send my resume? But when we linked in,
nice.
when we clicked in to what she wanted to do, then yes, she just started to say yes, and things became easier. And we're on a path now that she's excited about. And once you're excited about something, people open up to that. They kind of feel your joy. Because if you're trudging through, you know, and just going through the motions, people are not going to want to hire you. They're not even going to want to talk to you. But if you're talking about this is what I love, how do I do more of it? You're right. Things, doors are going to open up, and joy is going to happen.
And this, you know, in this article, they said you may, you know, don't leave your job. We're not advocating you run away from your job. What we're saying is put more things that bring you joy in your life.
Yes.
Put more, whatever it is, cooking, gardening, music, whatever. Just put it into your life, and you will find that you live a more vibrant life and more engaged. And you never know where it's going to go. So here I am, traveling all over the world, speaking to people. Who knew?
Right, and you don't know, but you have to find out what that piece. I once counseled a young man, and he was saying, you know, Kim, I have this, you know, what other people might perceive as a wonderful job as a consultant. I make a lot of money, and I travel all around. But he said, I'm not happy. This is not what I want to do. And I said, well, when was a time when you worked and you were happy? And he said, I did an internship for Gillette, and we made things. And I felt like at the end of the day, we made something, like things made a difference. And, you know, it was something I could walk away from and say, I was part of making razors and this, and we made things better. And I said, okay. So I said, when you look for your new job, let's, you know, construct a resume that, you know, focuses on your strengths and things like that, but look for companies that make things. And now he makes airplanes, and he so proudly says, I make airplanes. Now, he's not out there with a little drill on the wing, you know, but he's part of the consulting process that thinks about how to make airplanes better, that helps about the efficiency process, and he loves it. So for Christmas, we got him an airplane, you know, like a little toy airplane, but because he's so proud to be part of it. And it's those little adjustments that can make you so much happier, but it is connecting in, and they're so unique to you, and that's what we have to do. You and I bought both similar venues, is we help people draw out and figure out what brings them joy.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's as simple as changing someone's attitude. And you have talked to me about changing your attitude. And how did you do that?
Well, it was a interesting process, and also something that I didn't plan or think about. You would have thought, I have a degree in psychology, you would have thought that and then I became a psychiatric nurse, that I knew about how to change my own attitude, but I didn't. And it was when a friend of mine who is now 92, Helen Cleary, I'm going to say her name because I love her, and she's from Massachusetts. She said to me one day when I was complaining, Anne-Louise, you don't have to be a victim. And quite honestly, Kim, that was like an arrow in my heart.
Like, oh, what are you saying to me?
Right, what, me, a victim?
You're my friend.
Yeah, what are you talking?
Right.
And I said, I'm a victim. She said, yes, you're acting like a victim. And that began the path of learning how I could change my attitude.
Wow.
One way, change the words you tell yourself. That's what I did with Helen, though I didn't even know it. I was telling myself I had a terrible life. Just change those words. I don't have a terrible life. And when you start to change the words, everything starts to change for you. Because you can only hold one thought in your brain at once. Why not make it a good thought?
That's fantastic. It is, because sometimes you think, I can't do this.
Yes.
and you think, our parents know each other. It's kind of fun. My mother would often say to me, like, come down and visit. And I'd say, oh, I love to go to yoga in the morning. And then I wouldn't get down to her in the afternoon. And maybe I won't come this weekend. And I said, well, I started to think, like, I don't have time to exercise. And I started to ask myself a better question. How can I find time to exercise and enjoy the process?
Yes.
So lo and behold, I get a call from my mother and says, do you know they do yoga on the beach? Get down here early, come Friday night. And it was perfect, but she had it in her head like, whoa, Kim wants to go to yoga, she wants to exercise. And so then I go to yoga on the beach when I visit her. And you know, the sun is shining, the instructor's amazing. And we asked ourselves a different question, not, you know, I don't have time to exercise, or how can I, you know, find a gym down there, and it's amazing because we opened up to the possibilities. So it's asking yourself a better question is the key thing, and asking for support too, which you did, and I did. I said, Mom, I don't know. I got to, you know, it's really important to me to continue my yoga practice. How do I do it? And I look forward to going to yoga. And it's fantastic. And then friends come with me because they're like, yoga on the beach. It doesn't get much better than that. So it's thinking about that. So it's helping you, and you talk a lot about that, rewiring your brain for joy. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, in this process of learning not to be a victim and learning to change my thoughts, I started working with this, well, what do I want to say is a program, emotional brain training. I actually went and for 3 years worked on this for myself. And what I learned was that the neural networks in our brain are connected when we're little. And this is not about why or how or did you have a bad mother or a bad father. It's just that's how they got connected. And you act from those, and you don't always know it.
Yes.
And the way you act does not always support your health and happiness. But what I learned through this emotional brain training is you can disconnect the neural networks that don't help you and reconnect new ones that do help you have a life of vibrancy, joy, engagement, love, intimacy. And one of the ways you do that is changing the words you tell yourself. So for instance, let me just think of one. One of mine that I really had to work on was this old network that said, you can't be responsible for yourself. Now, who knows where that came from?
Right.
But I would act from that in ways that didn't support me because I wasn't taking responsibility for my actions. And once I reconnected that to say, I am responsible for myself. I love being responsible for myself. I have power when I'm responsible for myself. Once I change it to those words, it changed so much for me. So that's how you can, I mean, that's sort of a very gross overview of how you rewire your brain. But we can do it, that's it.
Right, we have the power to choose, and we have things that don't support us. I work with a lot of young women, and a lot of young women say, well, women don't have that as a profession. You know, a lot of women are grown up to be told they're not scientists. So a lot of individuals start off thinking about, oh, I want to be in science, and then are told messages that, oh, I can't do this. Women aren't good at math. Women aren't good at science. But they are. So you have to rewire their brain. Someone has to either themselves or someone, a supportive mentor or someone in their community has to say, you're amazing at this. You're very good at this. Let's support this. And just because you hit a roadblock doesn't mean you have to decide. A lot of young women in PhD programs, especially in math or science, opt out early because they think when they hit a roadblock, it's they can't do math or they're not for science. But it's really about that they're not getting the messages and support. They need to rewire their brain to say, this is just something we need to go through. We can get through this. And so now they're creating a lot of programs for women to stay in science, particularly because there is such a support, and there's a difference in the way women and men perceive different things. And even in a conversation, a woman might second guess herself because she's heard messages that way, and a man will not. So, I mean, again, these are gender stereotypes, but some of them came into place because they're true. So it's helping individuals rewire to say, this is just a bump in the road, not a limiting, you know, totally limiting factor.
Yeah, it's like, here's a little tiny example. I have difficulty with directions. Now, I can read directions, and I can read a map. But if you said to me, which way is north, or it's on the west corner, I don't know what that is. It doesn't compute for me. So for many, many, many years, I thought I was stupid. And then I found out I'm not stupid. It's just my brain works in a different way. And now I know what I need to do for me. So instead of the message, you're stupid, you can't read, you don't know directions, you can't get anywhere, instead of that message, I tell myself, I can get wherever I want to go. And this is how I do it for me.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it the way they do it or he does it. I can do it for me. So that's a new message instead of that old message, oh, well, you're stupid because you can't figure it out like they do.
Absolutely. Anne-Louise, I knew I liked you. I can't read directions either. I can't visualize. I don't know north, south, east, or west. And I tell my audiences that all the time. I said, I print out directions and I also bring my GPS because sometimes the GPS will say out of area. So I always have the map behind me and I always have them written out. And some people say, well, I'll tell you the directions and somehow I cannot hear directions. I need to have them written out. Some people say, I'll tell you directions. I said, well, you can, but don't expect me to be there. So on our other show that evolved from this show is called Employment for All, and it's called Everyone Can Be Successful with the Right Supports. And I tell my young adults, and I tell everyone that you just need the right supports in place. So yes, some people might say, okay, yeah, you're dumb because you don't know this, but no one's dumb. It's you need the right supports to get there. I can go anywhere around the country now, but I know I need these specific supports. And everyone needs supports in different arenas. Doesn't mean you can't be employed, doesn't mean you can't be fantastically successful, but you just need to know what you need to support you.
Yes.
I often give the example of Oprah. She's arguably one of the most successful women in the world. And she has the highest level of supports of anyone I know. And the supports for her, there's no stigma, right? She's got her own fitness trainer. She's got her own doctor at her beck and call. She's got dog walkers, probably cat sitters, makeup people every day, nutritionists. But there's no stigma against that, and it helps her be more successful. So it's odd. It's shifting our thinking around, okay, we need supports, but doesn't everyone? So it's helping people think differently about what the messages they tell out themselves.
Yes, exactly.
And the message they let in from other people.
Yes, exactly.
Is a very key. One of my favorite quotes is Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Yes.
And I help a lot of people block out some of the people that aren't helpful, and they don't mean not to be helpful.
Right.
But they are. They're sending a message that, oh, you can't do this, or that wasn't done in my day, or... And helping people rethink about, well, that's what they need to tell themselves, but you don't need to take that in.
Exactly, exactly. And that's really all about the rewiring of the brain. But the thing I think and you've said it, and that we really want people to know is that we have the choice to do that.
Yes.
And that's what I think is so key.
Yes. And we talk about kind of comparisons, because a lot of us get caught up comparing ourselves to one another.
Oh, yes.
And how do we help people stop doing that?
No, I had a little phrase for that, which I can't remember, about comparisons. I mean, there are a couple of well-known quotes about it. But what I say to myself when I'm comparing myself to somebody else is, this does not support your health and happiness, Anne-Louise. You are who you are. They are who they are. Because when you compare yourself to other people, you always end up on the bottom.
Yes, yes.
And it's just your little ego.
Right.
And if you end up on the top, that's just your little ego too. Okay, I'm skinnier than she is. Okay, well, she's skinnier than I am, or whatever it is. Or, you always end up in a bad place. It's about judging. I think that judging is one of the worst things we all do. We judge ourselves and we judge everybody else. And when you're judging other people, you're really judging yourself.
Yes, and it comes back up to bite you.
Yes.
I think you've told me comparisons are killers, because they are. They really kind of put you down.
They do.
And there's always someone, I always think of at the beach, there's always someone thinner than you, there's always someone richer than you, and there's always someone smarter than you. So why compare yourself? You get to be the best person you can be, and you can embrace that. And I just worked with this young adult, and it finally clicked for her, where she was like, I was trying to help her send an email to her aunts and her friends about finding a job. And finally she said, Kim, I don't really use the email. I text and I use, basically she texts most of the time. And I said, okay, well, what would you text? And we had to find it in her words. And she said, I have to be me.
Yes.
And I said, yes. And she finally got it. And it kind of, really sunk in. Okay, well, I want to say, I need to find out who I want to be when I grow up. And I'm trying to figure that out. And we got it in her words. And the smile on her face was like ear to ear. Yeah. And I said, okay, you're going to send out 7 of these messages before we meet next. She said, okay, I can do it. Because it was about her, and it was about genuinely who she was and where she felt she was in her life, and reaching out for supports. And I said, people love to help you.
They do.
They really do. They really do. But you need to be clear about what you're asking them, because she wanted at first just ask people, can we go for coffee? And I said, you kind of have to give them a little bit more of the heads up than, can I buy you a coffee? They're going to be like, do you want to borrow money? You know, is someone sick?
Yeah.
But I said, no, and just say, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And she was like, okay. And we worded it in her wording, and she was like, that's it. So it's helping you get clear on what you
Yes.
want to bring the joy into your life, and then reaching out to the right supports.
Yes.
Which
And
is
when
key.
and when you don't, you know, as a performer and a speaker, it's very easy to make comparisons and put yourself down.
Yes.
And here's what so I've learned this over the years. What I say, kind of what you were saying, which is, you have what you do, and there's going to be people who adore you.
Yes.
And I have what I do, and there's going to be people who adore me. There's going to be people who adore both of us.
Yes.
But if they don't adore me, that's okay.
Yes.
Because I am who I am, like this girl.
Yes.
I am who I am, and this is what I am about. And it's okay. And everybody doesn't have to love me.
No, and that's a place where you have
Yeah.
to get to. Like
Yeah.
I train young adults to
Yeah.
go, and I train actually lots of individuals to go and help people in job development. And one young woman went to an employer and tried to say, you know, I want you to work with us and hire the young adults we work with. And the employer was quite rude. And so she came back to me and she said, Kim, I can't believe this person was so rude. What should I do next? And I said, let me see the card. And she said, did I do something wrong? And I ripped up the card.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I said, if they're not with us, they're against
Right.
us.
So, yeah.
And so they're not meant to work
Right.
with us, and that's okay. We don't need every employer. We just need a few.
Right.
We just need the ones who really can support the young adults that
Right.
need the support that we need to work with. And she was like, yay! And she skipped out of my office and felt great. And that's what you want
Yeah.
to do. You want to find the people who
Right.
work with you. And you know what? If they don't work with you, they'll work with someone else.
And
that's
yeah,
okay.
And that's okay.
And so thinking
Yeah.
about that. Now, we've talked a lot, and someone might be wondering kind of how they get in touch with you. And I know David, our studio manager,
Yes.
has put together a great kind of thing about your website. So I'd like to show that. So if people wanted to hear you speak or they wanted to have questions for you, we've got kind of a thing about, and it's up on the air, and it's got,
Oh, good.
it's www.anne-louise.com, and then there's also your Facebook page, and it has your whole website up there. So if someone was wondering, wow, I like
Great.
what Anne-Louise had to say, I want to know more about it. So that's great, so people can get in touch with you. And also, it's very fun, you have an alter ego
Yes, I
named
do.
Aunt Lena. Tell us about that.
So Aunt Lena is really a sort of a combination of all my Italian relatives. I'm Italian, father's side and mother's side.
Wow, okay.
And she came out because I thought to myself, there's something I'm missing in my performing. This is when I was working with kids. And one day I thought, oh, it's my great aunts, because they were wild and crazy and flamboyant. And I just thought, oh, I'll just sort of internalize that and I'll let that come out. And then about a week later, I thought, oh, I'll be them. And I found this house dress, and I started becoming Aunt Lena in my speaking and performing. And Aunt Lena is the person everybody wants to know. People adore her.
They just love her. What she says resonates with them.
Yes, and she's very direct and to the point. She doesn't mince words.
People appreciate that.
Yes.
As long as it's said in fun.
Yes, exactly. And she has songs she teaches people and all kinds of things. In fact, I think she should come visit us on this show.
I think we need to meet Aunt Lena. I think that would be fabulous. So let's have her on, and she can share with us, because she has a lot of wonderful insights for people.
Yes, absolutely.
She has a lot to teach people.
Oh, yes.
So as we wrap up, would you like to either share one of your final thoughts with people, if people are thinking, wow, what Anne-Louise has said has really made a lot of sense for us. Would you like to share one of your insights or one of Aunt Lena's insights to tempt people? Because I think we'll have to have Aunt Lena on.
Well, all right. I'll give you a little Aunt Lena's, one of her insights.
Okay.
You know, I talked about being responsible for yourself.
Yes.
And the power that gives you. So here's how Aunt Lena says it. She says, you got to make your own gravy, doll. No matter how you slice the salami, it's the bottom line.
Wow, okay.
So if you want to know more about that,
All right, check us out.
check us out.
Very good, very good. So I'd like to say thank you very much, Anne-Louise, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to meeting and hearing more about some of Aunt Lena's pearls of wisdom.
Yes.
And I'd like to say thank you very much to our audience for tuning in to Picking Up the Pieces, where we dare to persevere and help young adults reach their full potential. And I'd like to ask you to check us out. We're about 4,000 people on our YouTube page. So if you go to www.youtube.com/employment for all, we're transitioning over. That was our old title to Picking Up the Pieces. Well, come and check out. We have many shows. You can see today's show will be up very soon. And then also we'll get on. We have several other shows. We have about 50 shows up on YouTube, so we'd love you to check us out. Lots of insights. We just had a great one posted about LinkedIn, how to use it, how to really maximize it. We had a fantastic one on networking, so check us out. We'd like to say, in conclusion, thank you to the Department of Mental Health for sponsoring our show. And this is Kim Bissett, saying have a fantastic afternoon.